Donald Trump just shook things up again, this time with a brand new 10% tariff on Chinese imports, kicking in on February 1st, 2025. If that sounds familiar, it's because he's already slapped a hefty 25% tariff on goods coming from Canada and Mexico. But this isn't just about trade, it's part of a much bigger plan. His administration is using these tariffs as a tool to tackle some major issues like cracking down on illegal immigration and stopping the flood of fentanyl pouring into the country. The idea? Hit foreign economies hard enough to push them into cooperating on these problems. But China isn't taking it lightly. Officials there have fired back, warning that a trade war won't help anyone. They're pushing the argument that when countries start slapping tariffs on each other, everyone loses. Businesses, workers, and everyday consumers alike. Meanwhile, Canada is furious. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made it clear that his country won't just sit back and take it. He's already talking about hitting back with countermeasures, especially since Canada's energy exports are a lifeline for the US economy. Ontario Premier Doug Ford took things even further, calling the tariffs an act of war. He's rolling out his own set of retaliatory moves, including banning American alcohol and targeting products from Republican-controlled states. And it's not just governments that are sounding the alarm. Big businesses are nervous too. Volkswagen, which has huge factories in Mexico, is worried that these tariffs could send shockwaves through the global auto industry. The company argues that if trade restrictions tighten, it won't just be automakers that suffer. American consumers will feel the pain as well. China has been quietly making moves behind the scenes, firing back in ways that haven't grabbed major headlines. While most people are focused on the tariffs the US has been rolling out, China has been playing its own strategic game, tightening its grip on critical resources and hitting back where it hurts. One of the biggest moves? Cutting off the flow of rare earth elements to the US, materials that are essential for everything from smartphones to fighter jets. Without them, tech companies and defense manufacturers could run into serious trouble. But that's not all. China has also slashed its oil purchases from the US, a major shift in trade that could ripple across global energy markets. And in a more direct hit, Beijing has slapped massive tariffs, some as high as 74.9%, on select American goods, making it way more expensive for US businesses to sell their products in China. All of this signals a major escalation in the ongoing economic showdown between the world's two biggest powers. It's no longer just a battle of tariffs, it's a full-blown trade war with both sides looking for ways to outmaneuver each other. But the US isn't backing down. In fact, Washington has doubled down on its own trade measures. While Trump's 10% tariff on Chinese imports made waves, the Biden administration has taken things even further. To counter what the US sees as unfair competition, especially from heavily subsidized Chinese industries, a new round of tariff hikes has been introduced. A key focus? The electric vehicle industry. The US has slammed Chinese EVs with an eye-popping 100% tariff, effectively doubling the previous rate. That means any Chinese electric car coming into the US now faces a staggering 12.5% total duty. The goal is clear: protect American automakers like Tesla and Rivian from being undercut by cheaper, government-backed Chinese competitors. But the fight doesn't stop with the cars themselves. The US is also targeting the critical components that power them. Lithium-ion EV batteries, which are essential for the future of transportation, have now been hit with a 25% tariff, more than tripling the previous 7.5% rate. The message? The US isn't just protecting its auto industry, it's trying to secure its control over the next generation of technology. And it's not just the US that's stepping up the pressure. Major economies like the EU, Japan, and Taiwan have also joined the fray, rolling out their own measures to curb China's growing influence in global trade. The US is making bold moves to shake up global trade, and this time the focus is on high-tech industries and essential goods. The government is rolling out a series of tariff hikes aimed at reducing reliance on Chinese imports and boosting domestic production. One of the biggest targets? Batteries. These power almost every electric vehicle on the road, and right now, China dominates the global market. To change that, the US is raising tariffs to make imported batteries more expensive. The goal is to push companies to manufacture them locally, strengthening America's own supply chain and reducing dependence on foreign suppliers. But the trade battle doesn't stop there. The semiconductor industry, crucial for everything from smartphones to military defense systems, is also in the spotlight. The US is set to double tariffs on Chinese-made semiconductors, increasing them from 25% to 50% by 2025. This move aligns with efforts like the CHIPS and Science Act, which is pumping billions of dollars into US-based chip factories to ensure America stays competitive in this critical sector. Medical supplies are another area where the US is cracking down. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it became clear how dependent the country was does on foreign-made masks, syringes, and other protective gear. Now, new tariffs are being introduced to change that. Syringes and needles, which previously had no tariffs, will now face a steep 50% duty by 2024. Certain medical masks and respirators will also see tariffs jump from percent to 25%. The message is clear: the US wants to secure its own supply of essential medical products. Clean energy is also getting a major policy shift. China has long been the dominant supplier of solar panels, but now the US is doubling tariffs on Chinese-made solar cells, pushing them up to 50%. The idea is to give American solar companies a fighting chance and encourage more local manufacturing. Beyond that, critical minerals like natural graphite and permanent magnets, key materials for electric vehicles and wind turbines, are also on the list. By 2026, these imports will face a 25% tariff, signaling a broader push to develop a more self-sufficient clean energy sector. Meanwhile, over in Europe, leaders aren't just watching from the sidelines. The European Union has been rolling out its own measures to counter what it sees as China's unfair trade practices. Europe has drawn a firm line in the sand when it comes to Chinese imports. On October 31st, 2024, the European Union rolled out a sweeping set of tariffs on electric vehicles coming from China, with new duties ranging from 7.8% to a hefty 35.3%. This means the steepest tariff now sits at a striking 45.3%. The move wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision. It came after a deep dive into Chinese government subsidies that the EU claims are giving Chinese automakers an unfair edge, squeezing out European competitors. But cars aren't the only products caught in the crossfire. The EU has also gone after Chinese imports of artificial sweeteners, slapping them with anti-dumping tariffs that stretch from 34.4% all the way up to a staggering 233.3%. These penalties, set to kick in by 2025, are aimed at shielding European producers from what officials see as unfairly low-priced goods flooding the market. The message is clear: Europe wants a level playing field and isn't afraid to push back against China's aggressive trade tactics. While Europe has taken center stage in this latest round of economic maneuvering, Japan and Taiwan have been making their own moves, albeit with less media attention. Japan has been strengthening its industrial policies and shoring up its supply chains, particularly in critical sectors like semiconductors and key minerals. Taiwan, meanwhile, remains a powerhouse in the global chip industry and is actively broadening its economic partnerships to reduce its reliance on trade with China. The escalating trade measures signal a larger trend. Countries are taking aggressive steps to safeguard their industries in a world where economic competition is heating up fast. But this is far from a one-sided affair. China has been hitting back in ways that could shake up global supply chains. One of its latest counterpunches? New tariffs on polyacetyl copolymers, a specialized plastic used in car parts, electronics, and industrial machinery. These tariffs range from 3.8% to a crushing 74.9%. And directly target imports from the US, the EU, Japan, and Taiwan. That means major companies like DuPont and Celanese, which rely on selling these materials to Chinese manufacturers, are now facing serious hurdles. For American exporters, these tariffs could be a knockout blow, making it nearly impossible to stay competitive in the Chinese market. European and Japanese suppliers might be in a slightly better position, thanks to their reputation for high-quality materials, but they'll still struggle with rising costs and a tougher business climate. The industries that rely on polyacetyl copolymers, especially car manufacturing, are likely to feel the squeeze as parts become more expensive. As global trade continues to fracture along these fault lines, businesses are being forced to rethink their strategies. Some may shift production closer to home, investing in domestic factories to avoid costly tariffs. Others might scramble to find alternative materials that won't get caught up in the trade war. And then there's the bigger question: how far will this economic standoff go before the ripple effects become too big to ignore?